Hey guys, Alex here with Serious Goose Games. Welcome back to our Unity Tactics RPG tutorial. In the last episode, we set up our unit selection and made sure our unit could only move within its range. Today, we're going to set up different movement costs and implement movement cost restrictions on our units. Now, as a disclaimer, there are a ton of ways to do what we're about to do. I chose the method we're using because it will be easy to expand into a future level editor system. But you could research and find tons of ways to go about this. We are going to be using a string of numbers in order to kind of determine what our movement costs are going to be for each tile. You could also use an image and determine the movement cost based on the color of a pixel. So there's lots of ways, but this way will be nice because when we have a level editor and we place down tiles, we can then export that tile map as a string of numbers, and it'll just be kind of nice to work with. So to start, we're going to open up our tile script, and at the top, we are going to add a public int called move cost. We'll set it to 0 by default. It'll be modified when we actually run everything. Next, we're going to go to our grid manager, and up here, under materials, we are going to add a public gradient. And this is going to be called terrain colors. And under map settings, we are going to add a public string called value map. And then below that, we're going to add a public const int max move cost. And by default, we're going to set this to 5. Now we're going to go down to where we generate our grid. Right under where we have our grid position, we do tilescript.grid position equals new vector 2. We are going to grab our tilescript dot move cost. This is going to be equal to our value map at an index of x times width plus y, and we are going to subtract the character 0 from that. Make sure when you put your 0 in, you're using single quotes because it is a character, not a string. So before we move on, let me explain this real quick. We are going to be using a string of numbers, which means when we retrieve something from our value map, we are retrieving a character. Now, the characters for the numbers, say it's 0. 0 is 50 when we convert it to an integer because it's grabbing its ASCII value, which is not what we want. We want it to just be its flat value. So in order to convert any of our numerical values from characters to ints, we need to subtract the character 0. 1 is 51, so if we subtract the character 0, we're subtracting 50, we get 1. I hope that makes sense. Unfortunately, because we're doing it this way, it limits what we can have for movement costs. Basically, we cannot go above 9, which honestly is kind of fine. If you have a tile that has that high of a movement cost, your tactics game is a little more interesting as far as map design goes. Now, what we're going to be doing is taking the move cost and assigning it a value along that gradient we created. But in order to do that, we need to convert it to essentially a percentage. So we're going to create a float called normalized cost. And this is going to be equal to a float we're going to cast tilescript dot move cost divided by our max move cost. Now here, where we're assigning the original color, instead of doing renderer.material.color, we are actually going to grab our tilescript.moveCost as long as it's... So now what we want to do is, instead of grabbing our original color and setting it to be the materials color, we are going to assign it that gradient color, which means we have to do our tilescript.moveCost. We need to check to see if it's greater than our max. So if it's greater than our max move cost, we'll use ternary here. Then we want to set it to color.red. If it's not, then we're going to set it to terrain colors dot evaluate normalized cost. So what we're doing here is we're checking to see if our move cost is actually a viable movement cost. If it is, great. We're going to assign it some color in our gradient. Otherwise, it's just going to be straight red. Now, the other way we could improve this is checking to make sure it's also above 0. We don't want a movement cost that's less than 0. That could cause problems. But for now, this will work. Now let's hop on over to tile again, and inside start, we are going to just call the change color method and pass in original color. That way, when we start the game, we spawn in the tiles, we're going to make sure our color of our tile is set to be whatever the gradient is. And the last thing we need to do is go back to our grid manager, and down where we are doing our highlight movement or getting our highlight range, where we are saying, is this diagonal? We have 2 and we have 1. What we're actually going to do, if it's diagonal, it's going to become 1 plus our neighbor dot movement cost. If it's not diagonal, it's just going to be the straight movement cost. So neighbor dot move cost. So go ahead and save all your code. So before we get into Unity and start hooking everything up, I want to show you guys kind of how map creation is going to work until we get a level editor set up. We still have a billion things to put in before we start thinking about expanding our map selection. So we've got time before we have to make another map. So I'm just using Notepad, and I'm starting out with a 10 by 10 grid of 1s. Every tile is going to start out at 1 by default. Now, what I'm thinking is I'm going to create kind of a mountain pass situation here. So I'm going to keep roads, or like a grassy path, as a 1. And then what I'll do is next to where I want my road, I'm going to change everything to a 2 because we're off-roading. Here, you can change it to really whatever you want. And it also helps if you have like a piece of grid paper and you draw out your little map and what your terrain is going to be. But I'm just going to kind of build out basically a gradient of tiles here. Once you have your map kind of plotted out with the numbers, if you're using Notepad, make sure you are getting rid of all of the new line characters. This should be just one big long line. Once you have that, go ahead and copy it. Let's head into Unity, go to our grid manager, and in the value map slot in the inspector, we're going to paste in that big long string. The next thing we want to do is select this terrain colors color bar here. And gradients are really cool because what we can do is we can add new little nodes along the gradient. And what I'm going to do, if you double click on one of these flags, you can pull up a color menu. I'm going to start out at gray, and I'm going to work my way up to like a brown to show mountains. And in between, and do like a light green for grass, and we'll do kind of a darker green for forests. So this creates a nice little gradient for us to play with. So once you have that, go ahead and save your scene, and we should be able to hit play and see it work. Okay, I won't lie to you, it's not the prettiest, but we can clearly see the movement costs. We have this road in the middle that's only going to cost 1. We can see now when we select our unit, their movement range is not just that diamond around them anymore, it's actually interacting with and responding to the movement costs of these different tiles. Our movement cost is only 3, so I can't enter this area that's 4. And then, of course, we've got this bright red, which is where my movement cost is 6, meaning we can't actually go through there. And I say we can't go through there, but we actually have no logic stopping us. If our movement range was higher than 6, we could pass over those tiles. So that's something for future us to deal with. It might be a little hard to tell, but if we compare our numbers here, our big long string, we can actually see everything lines up how we want it. I will say this is just for testing for now. Don't put a lot of effort into level design for whatever string you create here. We will have a level editor later. Don't put extra effort into something that we're going to make easier later. So in the next video, we're going to set up our unit snapping so that they'll snap to the grid. If we place a unit down, they're just going to pop right into it. We're also going to set it so tiles have occupancy, meaning that we won't be able to traverse or share a tile among units. It is going to be a little interesting because it means that our units will be able to body block each other, which I'm not necessarily against from a game design side, but I know it's not very common. So that's something to think about. That's all for today, though. So if you like this video, hit like so other devs can find the series, and subscribe to see more videos like this. In the comments, let me know how you would expand on this terrain system. I think I would like to add actual terrain objects with their own logic so we could have different terrain effects, plus more interesting visuals than colored squares. As always, thanks for watching. I'm Alex with Serious Goose Games, and I'll see you in the next one.